They say the most painful betrayal is the knife in your back from the person you once shielded from the bullets. I received two of those knives. My wife was smirking at the jury, already spending my millions in her head. But that smile vanished the exact second the courtroom doors swung open. She had conspired with my best friend and my own children to cook up the perfect case against me. I was supposed to go to prison and hand over everything I had built for 40 years, leaving me a broke, bitter old man. I waited until the very end. I let them say every word they wanted to say. Right before the sentencing, I spoke one sentence that turned their triumph into a living nightmare. Listen to my story. Maybe it will keep you from making the same mistakes I did. Let me introduce myself so you understand exactly who these prosecutors are trying to drag through the mud. My name is Elias Sterling. I am 52 years old. For most of my life, I didn't wear expensive suits like I am wearing now. My uniform was a pair of work boots, a hard hat, and a safety vest. I am the founder and owner of Sterling Foundations, the company whose cranes you see in every corner of this city. I used to consider myself a tough man, the master of my own fate, someone who knew how to take a hit. But today, looking at my children sitting on the prosecution's side, I don't feel like a millionaire. I feel like a man whose soul has been ripped out. I look around the room for one sympathetic face, but all I see is the greedy curiosity of spectators. Friends, this story isn't a complaint. It is a confession about how much it hurts to fall and how hard it is to get back up. Over the last 3 days, the wooden defendant's bench feels like it has become an extension of my spine. Every old injury I earned over 40 years on construction sites, from my aching lower back to my throbbing knees, has woken up, pulsing with a dull pain, as if my own body is protesting what is happening. The air in the courtroom is heavy and sticky, smelling of cheap floor wax, dusty files, and human betrayal. Sitting across from me, leaning back comfortably in a leather chair, is Marcus Beaumont. He is a man I called my brother for 20 years, the godfather of my daughter. A faint, victorious half-smile is frozen on his thin lips, aimed directly at me. The judge, a heavy-set man with bags under his eyes, slowly flips through the volumes of the criminal case. That dry rustle of paper sounds louder than my own heartbeat. In the silence. You know, they say your whole life flashes before your eyes before you die. But it turns out the same thing happens before a sentencing. To my right, in the front row, sits my family, or what is left of it. Alicia, my wife, sits as straight as a wire. In her formal black dress, she looks like she is at a funeral and a celebration at the same time, as if she has already buried me and is just waiting for the reading of the will. She hasn't looked my way once in 3 days. Beside her are Andre and Maya, my children, my own flesh and blood. Andre is nervously fidgeting with an expensive smartphone bought with my money, biting his lip. Maya, my little princess, has her head down so low, her hair hides her face. They aren't here to support their father. They are here to testify to my instability and greed. How did we get here? At what point did the foundation of our home crack without me noticing? I remember the beginning, not of the business, but of us, the family. I always lived by the principle my father, Silas, taught me back in the country. He was a woodsman, and he used to say, "A tree only grows strong when it faces the wind." I didn't want my children to grow up as spoiled trust fund kids, like hothouse plants that snap at the first sign of a breeze. When the business took off and the big money started coming in, I intentionally didn't fill the house with gold. It felt like the right thing to do. I remember when Andre graduated high school. He asked for a luxury sports car. I took him to one of our active construction sites, handed him a hard hat and a vest. "You want a car, son?" I asked him, looking him dead in the eye. "Earn it. I'll give you a job." I told him he'd start as a laborer, learn the smell of wet concrete, and understand where money actually comes from. He was offended, pouting his lips, but he went. For a month, he hauled cinder blocks, sweated, and came home exhausted. I was proud of him. I thought, that's my boy, becoming a man. But I found out too late that every evening at home, Alicia was quietly slipping him envelopes of cash so the boy wouldn't be embarrassed in front of his friends. It was the same with Maya. She wanted a shopping trip to Paris, but I put her in our company archives for the summer. Dust, folders, boring work for a standard wage. I believed I was building their character, but I was building walls, and I couldn't see what was happening to their souls behind them. Alicia, my beautiful, smart Alicia. I loved her with that blind love of a man who stays busy. I worked 20 hours a day so she could have everything. But it turns out she had been gathering venom for years. While I slept the sleep of an exhausted man after board meetings, she was dripping that poison into their ears, slowly and methodically. "Your father doesn't love you," she would whisper to them in the kitchen over tea. "He's stingy. He has millions, and you're wearing last year's clothes. He's just a narcissist, feeding his own ego." She turned my discipline into greed and my principles into senility. I would come home and see their cold stares, but I blamed it on the teenage years, on fatigue, on anything but the truth. For me, money was never the end goal. You know, when you stand on the roof of a finished building and see the lights coming on in the windows, you feel something much bigger than profit. It's the feeling of creation. For years, quietly and without cameras, I funneled a portion of our earnings into charity. Not into some shady foundations, but directly. Buying a ventilator for a local clinic, paying for a child's heart surgery, or fixing the roof of a veteran's home. Alicia called it my conscience tax. "You're stealing from your family," she would scream during our fights. "You're giving our money to strangers while your daughter has to take the subway." "Maya takes an Uber, Alicia," I would answer calmly. "And it's good for her to know the price of $1. You just want to be a saint at our expense," she would shriek. But the real fracture, the explosion that led me to this defendant's bench, happened 6 months ago. I had been nursing an idea for months. Our city's pediatric cardiac center was in terrible shape. An old building, mold on the walls, equipment from another era. I decided that Sterling Foundations would build a new wing entirely at my expense. It was a massive amount of money, nearly the entire year's profit, and a chunk of my personal savings. But I wanted to leave something real behind. Not a yacht that would rot, not a bank account that could be frozen, but a place where lives would be saved. That evening, I came home early, feeling inspired. Everyone was gathered for dinner. Alicia, Andre, Maya. I laid out the sketches for the new center on the table. "I've made a decision," I said, smiling. "We're starting a major project. It's going to be the best pediatric center in the state." Silence hung in the air. I expected questions, maybe even pride, but all I saw were twisted faces. Alicia slowly set her fork down. The sound of metal hitting porcelain sounded like a gunshot. "How much does it cost?" she asked in a voice made of ice. I told her the amount. Andre choked on his water. Maya stared at me as if I had announced I was going to burn our house down. "Are you joking?" my son asked quietly. "You want to give all that to them?" "To who, Andre?" "To sick children." "I don't understand your reaction." "This is our money. I earned it." "We earned it!" Alicia suddenly screamed, jumping up from her chair. "I put up with your business trips, your construction sites, your constant absence. That is the children's inheritance. You have no right." That night, the word divorce was spoken in our house for the first time. Alicia screamed so loud, the windows vibrated. She accused me of losing my mind, of wanting to leave the family destitute for a whim. The children stayed silent, but I saw the same thing in their eyes. Hate. They didn't look at me as a father, but as a thief stealing their future of luxury. I went to sleep in my home office, feeling a black hole opening inside me. I thought I was doing the most important work of my life, but it turned out I had declared war on my own family. The next day, Marcus Beaumont, my loyal CFO and friend, came into my office. He walked in quietly, closed the door, and looked at me with such universal sorrow and understanding that I almost broke down. "Elias," he said, softly pouring me a glass of water. "Alicia called. She's furious. She's going to see lawyers." I sat there with my head in my hands. The world was crumbling. "Let her go, Marcus. I'm not backing down. The center will be built. I know you're stubborn." Marcus sat across from me and leaned in trustingly. "But listen to me. If she files for divorce now, the courts will freeze all the assets. The construction will stop. We'll lose our reputation, our contracts, our people. You won't build anything. So what are you suggesting?" I raised a heavy gaze to him. Marcus placed a folder in front of me. "We have to be proactive. I've prepared a restructuring plan for the funds. We'll temporarily move the primary capital into subsidiary accounts under your personal control. Legally, they will be unreachable during a divorce settlement. It saves the company and your project." I looked at his honest, worried face. We had survived recessions and predatory lawsuits together. He was my daughter's godfather. Who was I supposed to trust if not him? I didn't know then that by reaching for that pen, I was tightening the noose around my own neck. Marcus didn't rush me. He was always a master of the pause. He stood by the window, watching the rain, occasionally glancing back at me with sympathy. He was like a doctor, offering a patient a bitter but necessary medicine. "Understand, Elias." His voice was smooth, enveloping like a fine cognac. "This is just a temporary measure, a technical maneuver, as the lawyers say. We're moving the liquid assets to accounts held by a shell company called Astrotech. On paper, it's a payment for consulting and strategic planning. In reality, the money stays in your pocket, but it becomes invisible to Alicia's lawyers, who are going to start tearing at your assets like vultures tomorrow." I rubbed my tired eyes, feeling the grit of sleepless nights behind my eyelids. Marcus's words had iron logic, the same cold calculation I had valued for 20 years. I am a builder. I know how to pour concrete and calculate the load on a structure. But in these paper labyrinths, where a comma can cost millions, I had always relied on him. "Is this legal, Marcus?" I asked, flipping through pages filled with tiny tables and legal jargon that made my head ache. I don't want the feds coming after me later. Marcus chuckled, walked over to the desk, and confidently placed his hand on the papers. Elias, you wound me. I'm the CFO. My job is to know exactly where the line is. This is clean. It's standard practice for protecting a business from a hostile takeover or, in your case, an aggressive asset split. You want to build that heart center, don't you? I do. I exhaled. It was my only wish. Then sign. Save the money. Save the project. You can deal with Alicia later, when you have all the cards, not empty pockets. How could I have known that in that moment, looking into my friend's honest eyes, I was digging my own grave? Trust is a terrifying thing. It strips us of our vigilance and leaves our bellies exposed to the knife. I took a heavy fountain pen, a gift from the staff for my anniversary, and started signing everywhere Marcus had placed a yellow sticky note. Among dozens of pages of standard contracts was the poisonous page I wouldn't learn about until I was in court. It was addendum number 4. In fine print, buried in complex terminology, it stated that the transferred funds were non-refundable payments for services already rendered. By signing that sheet, I was legally admitting that Astrotech had performed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work for us, even though the company was a shell registered to a front man in an offshore tax haven. But that evening, I didn't see a theft. I saw a life jacket. When the last signature was down, Marcus breathed a sigh of relief and neatly gathered the papers into his briefcase, clicking the locks. That sound, that dry metallic click, still rings in my ears today. You did the right thing, brother, he said. Now, I need your digital token, the electronic signature. I need to run the transactions tonight so that when the banks open in the morning, the money is already safe. Without hesitation, I took the flash drive with the digital key out of my safe. It was my access to every company account, my financial scepter. I handed it to him. Take it. Just be careful, Marcus. You hurt my feelings, he repeated, sliding the key into his jacket pocket. Sleep easy, Elias. I've got your back. I went home with a heavy heart, but a sense of duty done. I felt like I had outplayed fate. But as soon as I crossed the threshold of my own home, the illusion of control shattered. The house was thick with the atmosphere of a Cold War. Alicia didn't scream or break dishes this time. She chose a tactic that hurt much worse: total silence. She was sitting in the living room with a book, perfectly dressed, sipping a glass of wine. When I walked in, she didn't even look up. I was a ghost to her. Alicia, we need to talk, I began, stopping in the doorway. She slowly turned a page, took a sip of wine, and looking right through me, said in a level, icy tone, We'll talk in court, Elias. My lawyer will send you the summons. Until then, try to stay out of my sight in my house. Our house? I corrected, feeling my irritation boil. Not for long, she smirked. There was enough venom in that smirk to kill an army. I went upstairs, hoping to find some comfort with my kids. But I hit another wall. Andre's door was cracked open. He was at his computer, playing a shooter. Pizza boxes and empty energy drink cans were scattered everywhere. Andre, I called. He flinched, took off his headphones, but didn't turn around. What do you want? How was work? You didn't show up at the site today. The foreman called. Andre spun around in his chair. In his eyes, I saw a mix of fear and arrogance, the cocktail of a weak person who feels strong support behind them. I quit, Dad. Or rather, I just didn't go. I'm over it. Hauling bags is for losers. Mom said I don't need to do that anymore. Mom said? I felt the blood drain from my face. And how are you going to live? On your mom's stories. None of your business, he snapped. Everything's about to change. We're getting what's ours. He put his headphones back on, cutting me out of his world. I stood in the hallway, looking at the closed door, realizing I was losing my son. Alicia wasn't just turning them against me, she was corrupting them, promising an easy life, and killing the backbone I had worked so hard to build. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in the guest bedroom, listening to the rain, trying to shake a sticky, unpleasant premonition. You know that feeling when you leave the house and wonder if you left the iron on? That was me. I replayed the conversation with Marcus, his confident voice, his logic. Everything seemed right, but I kept seeing the way he rushed that folder into his briefcase. You're just being paranoid, Elias, I told myself, staring at the ceiling. Marcus is your friend. He's saving your skin while your wife is sharpening her knives. Don't doubt the only person left on your side. If only I had listened to that quiet voice of intuition. If only I had gotten up, driven to the office, and checked the servers. But exhaustion won. I fell into a restless, heavy sleep. While a few miles away, in my own office, Marcus was methodically dismantling my life. The next week passed in a strange fog. The office was quiet. Marcus told me he was taking a few days off to settle things with the banks and the IRS. I didn't object, burying myself in the daily grind of construction. I needed the distraction. Concrete hardening, cranes lifting. That was simple. I stayed late and left early. Alicia and the kids acted like they had already won a secret I didn't know. They whispered in corners and went silent when I appeared. I thought they were just confident in their lawyers. I had no idea they were preparing to put me in prison. The hammer dropped on Friday. I had planned that day as a day of reconciliation. Despite Alicia's coldness, I believed any ice could be melted with patience and love. I decided to stop hiding. I'd buy her favorite lilies, book a table at the restaurant where I proposed 25 years ago, and we would just talk. No lawyers, no accusations. I'd explain why the cardiac center was so important and offer a compromise. I was ready to give her more shares, anything to keep the family together. I stopped at a boutique florist and picked out a massive bouquet of white lilies. Their sweet, intoxicating scent filled the car. In my jacket pocket was a velvet box with a diamond necklace, my peace treaty. I drove home, humming along to the radio, feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. I imagined her seeing the flowers, her eyes softening, maybe even a smile. I was such a naive fool. I pulled it into the driveway at 4 in the afternoon. Alicia's car was there. Next to it, to my surprise, was Marcus's black SUV. That's strange, I thought, grabbing the bouquet. Maybe he was dropping off documents, or decided to talk some sense into her as a godfather. The thought actually cheered me up. Marcus was helping me on the home front. I opened the door with my key. The foyer was silent. I heard muffled voices coming from the second floor, from our bedroom. Laughter. Alicia's laughter. Not the cold, mean laugh from the last few weeks, but a low, intimate sound, and a man's voice answering her in the same tone. I started up the stairs, trying to be quiet, though the pounding of blood in my temples was deafening. The bouquet in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. One step, two. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Time stopped. The scene before me burned into my memory forever, like a photograph on a tombstone. They were there, in my bed, my best friend and my wife. In that moment, as the lilies fell from my hands and scattered across the floor, I realized there was no asset protection plan. There was no astrotech to save the money. There was only a conspiracy, carefully planned, cynical, and ruthless. They weren't just sleeping together. They were destroying me together. Marcus slowly turned his head. There was no fear in his eyes, no shame. Only that same triumphant emptiness I see now in this courtroom. "Well," he said calmly, not even trying to cover up, "the surprise is ruined, Elias. Or maybe it's just the beginning." I stood there, looking at the traitors, having no idea that the real nightmare would start 10 minutes later when they opened their mouths. I was staring at the lilies on the floor, thinking about how I had specifically chosen the unscented ones because Marcus had allergies. What a joke. I was worried about the comfort of the man who was currently ending my life. Alicia didn't scream. She didn't cry or reach for the sheets. She slowly adjusted the strap of her silk nightgown. There was so much contempt in that gesture, it felt like ice water. "Close the door, Elias." "There's a draft," she said calmly, as if I were a servant who had forgotten to shut a window. Marcus, my brother, my financial genius, sat on the edge of the bed and started looking for his socks. His arrogance, the absolute lack of fear, paralyzed me more than the cheating did. I wanted to lunge at him, break his face, throw him out the window, but my legs were rooted to the floor. I was a builder, a man of action, but I was facing a level of cynicism I couldn't fight with my fists. My voice was a raspy whisper. "Yesterday, you talked about saving the company, about protecting me from the divorce." Marcus looked up and smirked as he buttoned his shirt. "I did save the company, Elias, from you. You signed everything yourself. Remember addendum number 4? What addendum?" I felt the floor shifting. "That was a consulting agreement. That was a confession, Elias," he interrupted in a hard, businesslike tone. "You signed documents admitting that every transfer to Astrotech was not for services, but a diversion of funds under your personal direction to evade taxes and hide capital. Legally, that is embezzlement and money laundering. Pure and simple." I leaned against the doorframe because my knees were shaking. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. There was no defense strategy. All the talk about the evil wife and frozen accounts was a performance to get me to panic and sign papers without reading them. "But the token," I whispered. "I gave you my key." "Exactly," Marcus nodded, tying his tie in my mirror. "And using your key, I confirmed all the transactions last night. Every bank log shows your digital signature. The court will see it as a man trying to hide money before a divorce, but getting caught." Alicia stood up and started brushing her hair. Our eyes met in the mirror. I looked for a drop of regret, a shadow of the woman I had loved for 25 years. But there was only the coldness of a reptile. "We don't need you anymore, Elias," she said. "You became inconvenient with your principles and your charities and that damn heart center. You wanted to throw our fortune to the wind. We just took what rightfully belongs to us." "To you?" I choked. "I worked for 40 years. I built this from nothing." "And we tolerated you for 40 years, she snapped, spinning around. "Your constant trips, your dirty fingernails, your lectures on how to live. I'm tired of counting pennies while being married to a millionaire. Marcus understands me. Marcus knows how to live well." In that moment, I realized I was looking at a stranger. A dangerous stranger. "You have 10 minutes, Marcus said, checking his watch. The watch I had given him for his last birthday. "The police are already on their way. An embezzlement report was filed by the board of directors an hour ago. If you leave now, there will be less noise during the arrest. Consider it my parting gift. Get out, Elias." I walked out of the bedroom, stumbling like a drunk man. I didn't need 10 minutes. I didn't want anything from that house. It had become a tomb. I went into my office, grabbed an old leather briefcase I had used back when I was a foreman, and threw in my ID, my passport, and a photo of my father. My old work jacket was on the rack. I threw it on over my suit. I wanted to rip off the expensive watch and cufflinks and throw them at their faces, but I held back. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. The worst part was waiting downstairs in the foyer. I hoped to slip out unnoticed, but they were waiting for me, Andre and Maya. They stood at the base of the stairs with their arms crossed, like guards protecting a new life where I didn't exist. "Dad, did you really do it?" Maya asked. Her voice shook, but there were no tears of sympathy, only fear and disgust. "Mom said you tried to steal the money and run away to another country with some woman. Maya, baby, listen to me." I took a step toward her. "Don't come near her," Andre barked, stepping in front of me. He was taller than me now, a strong, handsome kid I had poured everything into. "You're a thief. You lied to us about honor and conscience while you were skimming off the top. Marcus showed us everything. The bank statements." "Marcus showed you?" I laughed bitterly. "Did Marcus show you how he was in bed with your mother 5 minutes ago?" Andre winced, like he had a toothache. "Don't you dare talk about Mom like that. She's a saint. She put up with you for years. Marcus protected us. He promised we wouldn't end up on the street because of your scams. Just go. Get out." That was the second knife. They didn't just believe the lie. They wanted to believe it. Marcus's version was convenient for them. It freed them from having to work, from my lectures, from a boring life. Marcus offered them a fairy tale where Dad was the villain and they were the victims who deserved a payout. I looked at my son and daughter and saw small copies of Alicia, Consumers. "Fine," I said quietly. My voice sounded hollow. "I'll go. But remember this day. One day you'll realize that money gained through betrayal burns your hands. And when that fire reaches you, don't say I didn't warn you." "Just leave already, philosopher," Andre shouted, turning away. I walked outside into a downpour. The freezing rain hit my face, washing away the last bit of warmth from that cursed house. I got into my old Ford F-150, the one I kept for hunting and fishing, the only vehicle not registered to the company. My hand shook so hard it took 3 tries to get the key into the ignition. As the engine roared to life, I saw Alicia's silhouette in the upstairs window. I didn't honk. I just drove away. I drove through the city, aimless. Lights, happy people with umbrellas, advertisements. Everything passed by in a blur. I was alone. My accounts were frozen. My name was trashed. And my family had discarded me. I was 52 with nothing but a briefcase and half a tank of gas. Where could I go? A hotel? My cards were dead. Friends? What friends? They were friends of Elias Sterling, the mogul. Who was I now? A criminal? A cuckold? I pulled over to the shoulder, put my head on the steering wheel, and for the first time in 40 years, I cried. Not out of self-pity, but out of the sheer weight of the pain. It was thick and black like oil. I howled like a wounded animal, pounding the dashboard until my knuckles bled. Then when the tears ran dry and only a ringing silence remained, I remembered one place. A place where they don't ask for bank statements. The old house on the outskirts of the country where I grew up. My father, Silas, lived there. I hadn't seen him in 6 months. Always too busy, always a meeting, always a deadline. We forget our parents when we're on top and run to them the second we fall. I turned the truck around and drove toward the smell of wet earth and wood smoke. It took 3 hours. I pulled up to the familiar sagging fence past midnight. The windows were dark. I sat in the silence for a long time, listening to the rain on the roof. I was ashamed to knock on his door looking like this. Crushed, disgraced. What would I say? Dad, I lost everything? I got out and walked to the gate. It creaked, a sound from my childhood that made my chest tighten. The dog in the yard didn't bark. He recognized me and whined quietly. I knocked on the window. A minute later, a light came on. Shuffling steps, the bolt slid back. The door opened, and there was my father, a heavy wool coat thrown over his shoulders. He had aged, his back was hunched, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, clear, seeing right through everything. He didn't ask a single question. He didn't ask what happened or why I looked like a ghost. He looked at me, then at the truck, then back at me. "Come in, son," he said simply, stepping aside. The kettle's still warm. In those few words, there was more love than in 25 years of Alicia's smiles. I stepped over the threshold into the smell of dried herbs and baked bread, and I felt something inside me finally let go. I was home. But I didn't know yet that it was in this old house that my climb back up would begin. The first few days at my father's house felt like a gray, sticky nightmare. Time had no meaning. I would wake up before dawn, staring at the cracked ceiling, trying to remember who I was. For a split second, I'd think I was in my plush bed with Alicia next to me, facing a day of blueprints and boardrooms. Then the reality would hit me like a ton of bricks. I was in a drafty house on a rusted bed. My name was Mud. To keep from losing my mind, I punished myself with physical labor. I'd go out back while the roosters were still quiet, grab a heavy axe, and split wood until my arms shook and my shirt was soaked through. The crack of metal on wood, the flying splinters, the scent of fresh pine. It was the only thing that felt real. I swung that axe with a vengeance, imagining Marcus's smug face or Alicia's cold eyes on every log. I wanted to sweat the pain out of my system. My father, Silas, didn't interfere. As an old woodsman, he knew a wounded animal needs time to lick its wounds in peace. He'd just leave a mug of hot herbal tea on the porch and go about his chores. The news was the hardest part. In the evenings, my father would turn on his old TV. I saw my own face on the news. Young, eager reporters were gushing about the corrupt mogul who stole from sick children to buy a villa in Spain. They showed footage of Andre and Maya leaving the district attorney's office. Andre was hiding his face, playing the part of the offended innocent. Maya was dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief, telling the microphones, "We're in shock. We didn't know our father was capable of this. We will cooperate fully." It was physically painful to watch, like someone was driving screws under my fingernails. I wanted to scream at the screen to prove it was a lie, but who hears an old man in the middle of nowhere? I'd turn off the TV, pour a glass of my father's moonshine, and drink it without tasting it, just to put out the fire inside. One night, while the wind was howling outside, I couldn't take it anymore. "Dad?" I said, staring into my glass. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I wasted my life." He put down his newspaper, took off his glasses, and gave me that long, heavy look that used to make me want to hide as a kid, but now made me feel safe. What are you talking about, Elias? Everything. I built buildings, but I didn't build a family. I tried to raise people, but I raised parasites. I thought I was doing good. And now, the world calls me a thief. Maybe I was too hard on them. Maybe I should have just given them the cars and the money. Maybe they would have loved me then. I want to ask you all a question that still haunts me. Do you think I should have forgiven my children and backed down just to keep the appearance of a family? Or can you never forgive betrayal, even if it's your own blood? My father sighed. His wide palm, rough like oak bark, rested on my hand. Listen to me, son. In the woods, sometimes you see a tree, tall, beautiful, full of leaves. But if you dig at the roots, they're rotten. Other times, you see a tree that's gnarled and small, but it's growing out of a rock so deep, no storm can move it. You didn't just build walls, Elias. You built your honor. And honor is a foundation that can't be frozen in a bank or stolen with fake papers. What honor, Dad? I laughed bitterly. I'm a criminal, a thief. I'm going to prison tomorrow. They can put you in a cell, he said calmly, pouring more tea. But they can't break you unless you let them. You're a good man, Elias. And life can take everything from a good man, money, home, even family. But it can't take the truth. Remember, the dark is always thickest right before the dawn. Things turn out okay for good people because the truth is a foundation too, and it's still there as long as you're breathing. His words, timeless as that old house, sank into my soul, but they didn't bring instant relief. I still felt crushed. That night I stayed awake, listening to the clock tick, thinking I didn't have the strength to fight. Marcus had the best lawyers, the money, the connections. Alicia had the victim act. And I had an axe and a truth that nobody wanted to hear. I decided I'd just plead guilty. Let them lock me up. I wanted the hell to end. On the morning of the third day, as I sat on the porch staring at the grass, my phone vibrated. I had changed the SIM card to avoid reporters, so I flinched. It was an unknown number. I almost declined it, thinking it was another vulture from the tabloids, but something made me answer. Hello? My voice was raspy. Elias Sterling? A woman's voice was on the other end, nervous, rushed, but warm. This is Tasha Jackson. My son, Avery. You paid for his heart surgery 3 years ago. Do you remember? I frowned, trying to remember. Avery? A bright kid who used to draw pictures of ships. I remember, Tasha, I said tiredly, but this isn't a good time. I can't help with money right now. I'm sorry. No, I'm not calling for money, she interrupted. I'm calling to say we don't believe it. None of us do. Not the parents at the hospital. Not the doctors. We saw the news. It's a lie. You saved my son when every other foundation turned us down. You aren't a thief, Mr. Sterling. Thank you, Tasha. A lump formed in my throat. But the court doesn't care about what people believe. There are documents I lost. There was a pause. Then she spoke softer, almost a whisper. Mr. Sterling, you haven't lost. Listen to me. I have a friend named Sasha. She used to be Marcus Beaumont's personal secretary. I stiffened. Sasha. A quiet, unassuming woman who always brought the coffee and disappeared. And Marcus fired her a week ago, threw her out like a dog without a scent. He said she knew too much and he didn't want any extra eyes around before the trial. She's terrified, Mr. Sterling. She's hiding at her aunt's place. But she came to me yesterday, crying. She said she saw how he did it. Did what? I stood up, knocking over my stool. My heart started racing. How he forged the documents. And Mr. Sterling, she took something. She said she kept insurance. A server backup or a disk, I don't know the technical stuff. She was going to destroy it because she was scared. But I talked her into waiting. The world around me stopped being gray. The colors came back instantly, sharp and bright. Where is she now? My voice was like steel again. The same steel I used to manage thousands of workers. I can't say over the phone, Tasha said, panicked. Meet me at the park by the Unfinished Heart Center. Tonight at 8, I'll bring her. Please, be careful. I hung up and looked at my father. He was standing in the doorway, and I think he heard everything. I didn't have to explain. I saw the approval in his eyes. Go, he said shortly, and take my old Chevy. They might be watching your truck. Thanks, Pop. I squeezed his shoulder. Don't mention it. And remember, Elias, the foundation. You have something to stand on. Now go get your life back. I sped toward the city, in my father's old Chevy Impala, pushing the engine for everything it had. The fear was gone. The depression had vanished like fog in the sun. In their place was a cold, calculating rage. They thought I was an old, toothless lion, crawling away to die. They thought they could walk all over me. They were wrong. I wasn't just going to a meeting. I was going to war. And this time, I wasn't playing by the rules. If Marcus wanted a dirty fight, he'd get one. I was going to bury him in it. But I didn't know how hard the talk with Sasha would be. A terrified witness is like glass, pressed too hard, and she breaks. Let go, and she slips away. I had one shot to convince her to stand up to the man who kept the whole office in fear. I pulled up to the construction site where the unfinished skeleton of the cardiac center sat in the dark. In the headlights, the concrete beams looked like the ribs of a massive, abandoned beast. It hurt to look at it, knowing every bolt and nail. But that pain didn't paralyze me anymore. It fueled me. I turned off the engine and stepped out into the drizzle. The park was empty, just the wind swinging the streetlights and throwing shadows on the pavement. 5 minutes later, 2 women emerged from the shadows. Tasha was leading the way, walking with the confidence of someone with nothing to lose but her conscience. Behind her, Sasha was scurrying, her head tucked into her shoulders. I barely recognized her. The office Sasha was always perfect. Neat hair, sharp suit, professional smile. The woman before me was a trembling mess in an oversized coat, her eyes red from crying. Mr. Sterling, Tasha walked up, and to my surprise, hugged me like an old friend. Thank God you came. I patted her shoulder awkwardly, feeling a lump in my throat from the human warmth I had been starved of. Thank you, Tasha. I won't forget this. I looked at Sasha. She was a step back, fidgeting with her bag, shaking so hard I could see it in the dim light. Hello, Sasha, I said softly. Don't be afraid. No one is going to hurt you here. She looked at me with pure terror. You don't understand, Mr. Sterling. Her voice was nearly a shriek. Marcus, he's not human. He'll find out. He told me if I opened my mouth, he'd bury me in the foundation of one of your buildings. He has friends in the police. He has people everywhere. Why did I even come? This is crazy. She turned to run, but Tasha grabbed her arm firmly. Stay! Tasha barked, sounding like a mother protecting her child. You promised, Sasha. You want to spend your whole life afraid? You want him to keep walking on you? I realized it was all hanging by a thread. If I acted like the boss, she'd snap. If I offered money, she'd think I was buying in her and get more scared. I had to be just a man in a corner, like her. "Sasha, look at me," I asked quietly, showing my empty hands. "Look at me closely. I lost everything. My wife and my best friend betrayed me. My kids spat in my face. I'm sleeping in a shack that's saltier than you are. Well, Marcus destroyed me. He dragged me through the mud. But I'm here. I'm standing here because it's too late to be afraid." Her eyes stopped darting and focused on me. She didn't see the millionaire from the magazines. She saw a tired man with 3 days of stubble and a pain she recognized. "He used us both, Sasha," I continued. "To him, we're just supplies. I'm a bank account, and you're a convenient shield. He threw you away like a used napkin as soon as he didn't need you. Do you really want to give him this win? Do you want him drinking champagne on my grave and laughing at your fear?" Sasha sobbed, covering her face, her shoulders shaking with real grief. "He forced me," she whispered. "He made me backdate those contracts. I didn't want to, Mr. Sterling, I swear. He said if I refused, he'd pin a company theft on me. I have a mortgage. My mother is sick. I was scared." "I believe you," I said, stepping closer. "But we have a chance to fix it." "What do you have?" She took a shaky breath and reached into her inner pocket. A second later, a red flash drive glinted in her hand, a tiny piece of plastic that weighed nothing but could tip the scales of justice. "Everything is on here," she said, handing it to me. "It's a copy of his private server. He thought he deleted it, but I made shadow copies every day. Force of habit, just in case." "What's on it?" I asked, holding it like a diamond. "It's not just the double bookkeeping, Mr. Sterling. It's the recordings. He recorded every conversation in his office. Alicia's, too." I froze. "Audio recordings?" That was better than any document. "There's a recording of their conversation from a week ago," Sasha continued, a new hardness in her voice. "They were discussing how to split the money after the trial. Alicia signed the consent to move assets offshore, and there's a part where she says she doesn't care about the kids, that Andre and Maya are idiots who will blow the money in a year, so she's going to leave them with the company's debts while she runs off to Panama with Marcus." Hearing that, I felt something break inside me. Even knowing the betrayal, some part of me hoped Alicia loved the kids in her own twisted way. But hearing that she sold them out too, that was beyond human understanding. My children, my foolish, deceived children, were sitting at home, waiting for an inheritance, not knowing their mother had already handed them a one-way ticket to financial ruin. "Thank you, Sasha," I said, squeezing the drive so hard it dug into my palm. "You saved more than just me. You might have saved their lives. No, a flash drive isn't enough. The court might reject it. Marcus will claim it's fake. I need you to testify tomorrow." Fear flashed in her eyes again, but she fought it off faster this time. "I'll go," she nodded. "But not alone." "Of course. I'll be there." "No," she interrupted. "Not just you." She pulled out her phone and dialed. "Detective Vance?" "Yes, we met." "He's here. Come on over." I looked at her, surprised. "Who's that?" "He's with the white-collar crimes unit," Sasha explained. "I went to him yesterday before I called Tasha. He's been investigating Marcus for a long time, but they didn't have direct evidence. Now they do. He was waiting in his car around the block." I looked at this fragile woman with new respect. She wasn't just a scared secretary. She was smarter and braver than all of us. She had covered every base. A gray sedan pulled up, and a fit man in plain clothes got out with the sharp eyes of a pro. We did a quick introduction. "Mr. Sterling, time is short," the detective said, taking the drive in an evidence bag. Tomorrow is your final hearing. Perfect. We won't arrest Marcus tonight. Let him think he's won. Let him relax. We'll take them right in the courtroom when they're celebrating their victory. It'll be a statement, and no lawyers will have time to interfere. What about Sasha? I asked. It's not safe for her to go home. She's coming with me, Vance said. We're processing her as a protected witness. She'll stay in a safe house. Tomorrow morning, we walk into that courtroom together. Your job, Mr. Sterling, is to stall. Let Marcus talk. Let him believe you're broken. Then give us the signal. We parted ways in the rain. Tasha hugged me goodbye. Vance drove Sasha away. I stood alone by the Chevy, clutching my old phone. The rain didn't feel cold anymore. It felt like it was washing away the filth of the last few weeks. I sat in the car, looking at the dark frame of the Heart Center. For the first time, I didn't see ruins. I saw a future. Hang in there, Elias, I told my reflection. Tomorrow is your day. I got back to my father's house toward dawn. He was awake, sitting by the stove, fixing a fishing net. Well? He asked without looking up. We've got them, Pop, I said, feeling a mountain lift off my shoulders. We've got them. Then get some sleep, he nodded. A soldier needs his rest before the fight. And I ironed your suit. A man shouldn't go to court looking rumpled. I fell into the first peaceful sleep I'd had in a month. I knew they would drag my name through the mud one last time. I knew I'd see betrayal in my children's eyes. But I had the sword of justice in my pocket. And I was going to bring it down with everything I had. The trial resumed after the break. This final act was supposed to be my public execution. The air in the room was so thick with lies, it was hard to breathe. I sat straight, hands on my knees, feeling a strange, icy calm. It was the calm of a sniper who has already pulled the trigger and is just waiting for the bullet to land. The first to the stand was Andre, my son. He wouldn't look at me. His eyes darted around, catching on the walls, the lights, the jury. He spoke in rehearsed sentences, clearly written by Marcus's lawyers, but his voice was shaking. My father, he began, clearing his throat, was always obsessed with power. Money meant more to him than we did. He never loved us. He just saw us as extensions of his business. When he started moving money to these offshores, we realized he had lost touch with reality. We were afraid for our future. Every word fell like a stone in the silence. I listened and didn't recognize my own child. Was this the boy I taught to fish? Had the thirst for easy money erased his conscience so completely? But I stayed silent. I knew something he didn't. His betrayal had been bought with counterfeit checks. Then Maya went up. She played her part better. She pulled out a lace handkerchief and sobbed right on cue. Dad became unbearable, she said through fake tears. He would scream and threaten Mom, telling us he'd leave us penniless. We saw the documents. We know he's a thief. I'm ashamed to have his name. Your Honor, please protect us from him. The judge nodded sympathetically. The prosecutor made notes with the look of a winner. Alicia, in the front row, patted her daughter's hand as she sat back down. It was a masterpiece of hypocrisy. Last was Marcus. He stood up, smoothed his jacket, and walked to the stand with the stride of a man who owned the room. He spoke with authority, using financial terms, masterfully blending truth with lies. Elias Sterling is a talented builder. I won't deny that, he told the room. But greed has destroyed better men. I tried to stop him, tried to talk sense to him, but he was deaf. It hurts me to see my friend fall this low. No, the law is the law. A thief belongs in prison, even if that thief is a millionaire. He finished and looked at me with that same smirk from the bedroom. His eyes said, "You're dead, Elias. You're nothing." The judge took off his glasses. "Does the defense have any more witnesses or motions?" he asked, clearly ready to head to his chambers for sentencing. My public defender, who had already given up on me, started gathering his papers. This was the moment. I slowly stood up. My back didn't ache. I squared my shoulders, took a breath of that stale air, and my voice cut through the silence. "Your Honor, I ask the court to call one final witness who was not previously listed." A murmur went through the room. Marcus frowned. Alicia gripped her purse. "That's a procedural violation," the prosecutor argued lazily. "The witness list is closed. This witness has information that only became available yesterday. Information that completely changes the nature of this case," I stated, looking the judge in the eye. "We are talking about large-scale evidence tampering." The judge, an experienced man, felt the shift in the room. He looked at me, then at a visibly nervous Marcus, and nodded to the bailiff. "Bring in the witness." The heavy oak doors swung open. Sasha Dubois walked in. She was as pale as a sheet, but she walked with her head high. Walking beside her, providing an unspoken but powerful presence, was Detective Vance, in full uniform with a file in his hand. In an instant, Marcus transformed. His face went gray. His confidence peeled off like old paint. He jumped up, knocking his chair over. "This is a lie. A setup," he shrieked like a trapped rat. "That woman is mentally unstable. I fired her for stealing. You can't listen to her. Your Honor, I protest." He lunged toward the aisle, as if to block her path, but at a quick nod from the detective, two bailiffs intercepted him, forcing him back into his seat. "Sit down," the judge barked, slamming his gavel, "or I will have you removed." Sasha reached the microphone. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear. "My name is Sasha Dubois. I was Marcus Beaumont's personal assistant for 10 years. I am here to state that every document presented by the prosecution is a forgery." "How can you prove this?" the judge asked, leaning forward. Instead of answering, Detective Vance walked to the judge's bench and placed the red flash drive and phone records in front of him. "Your Honor," he said, "this contains the original files with metadata proving changes were made from Marcus Beaumont's computer via remote access. It also contains audio recordings from his office. I request permission to play one file, dated October 15th. Marcus jumped up again, his face turning beet red. Alicia froze, turning into a statue. "Permission granted," the judge said. In a total silence, the sound of a recording filled the room. Clinking glasses, rustling, and then the voices. Voices everyone in that room knew. Marcus's voice. "Well, Alicia, it's in the bag. Elias signed everything. In a week he'll be a bum." Alicia's voice. "Excellent. When do we get the money?" Marcus's voice. "As soon as the court freezes it and we get an external manager appointed. I'll have the assets in Panama in 3 days. The tickets are booked. It's our... Are you ready?" Alicia's voice. "Ready. I'm tired of this play acting. Just one thing. The kids." Marcus's voice. "What about them?" "We agreed. We'll leave them the house and the car. That's enough for them." Alicia's voice. "Yeah, I guess. They're idiots, Marcus. Andre will blow it all at the casino, and Maya will spend it on clothes. They can't be trusted with money. Let them handle the company's debts. It'll build their character. After all, Elias always wanted them to know the value of work. Let them find out. You and I deserve the good life. Laughter. The clink of glasses. The recording stopped. The silence that followed could have been cut with a knife. It was more terrifying than any scream. I didn't look at Marcus or Alicia. I looked at my children. Their world had just ended. Andre slowly turned his head toward his mother. His face was white, his lips trembling. Maya covered her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. They had just heard the mother they worshipped, the woman they betrayed their father for, call them idiots, and sell them for a ticket to Panama. Alicia sat motionless. The mask of the socialite had slipped, revealing a tired, bitter woman. She knew it was over. No Panama, no millions. Marcus, realizing it was all gone, suddenly started screaming, "It's a deep fake. It's AI. You can't prove anything." But Vance was already signaling to the officers. "It's not a deep fake," Sasha said quietly into the mic. "I have the original recorder. And Marcus, did you forget the server keeps logs, even when it's offline?" The courtroom exploded. Reporters started snapping photos. The judge hammered his gavel for order. Officers surrounded the prosecution table. I stood in the middle of the chaos, feeling a strange emptiness. I had won. My name was cleared. But looking at my crushed children, I didn't feel joy. I only felt the bitterness that truth can sometimes be heavier than a lie. Andre suddenly stood up and lunged, not toward me, but toward his mother. "You!" he screamed, his voice breaking. "You sold us! You said we were idiots?" Alicia slowly turned her head and looked at her son with cold irritation. "What else are you if not idiots?" she hissed. "You never lifted a finger in your life. You lived off everything I gave you. I just wanted what was mine." Maya started sobbing loudly. Vance walked over to Marcus and pulled out the handcuffs. The click of the metal was the final note in this symphony of betrayal. My best friend was led out under a barrage of camera flashes. Alicia was escorted out as well, though not in cuffs yet. I slowly walked toward the railing. My children were sitting there, destroyed, crushed, alone in the crowd. They looked up at me. There was no hate left, just shame, pain, and a silent plea. They expected me to walk over, hug them, and tell them Dad would fix everything, like he always did. I looked at them and realized it. If I pity them now, if I give them money, I will finish the job Alicia started. I will turn them into the idiots she described. I met Andre's eyes. He moved toward me. "Dad," he whispered. I stood there for a second, looking at him and then at Maya. Without saying a word, I turned and walked toward the exit where Sasha and my father were waiting. I had one more important thing to do. A month has passed since that day in court. It felt longer than the previous 50 years of my life combined. When the dust settled and the headlines faded, a silence took over. But it wasn't the suffocating silence of loneliness. It was the silence after a storm, when the air is clear and you can finally breathe. Marcus was sentenced quickly. The evidence was ironclad. He got 8 years in federal prison with full asset forfeiture. I didn't go to the sentencing. I had no interest in seeing a man who had died to me the moment I saw him in my bedroom. Alicia's situation was more complicated. With high-priced lawyers, she avoided prison, but received a long probation for conspiracy to commit fraud. But life punished her worse than a cell could. She was left with nothing. The prenuptial agreement she tried to bypass ended up being her undoing. Her reputation as the Black Widow, who would sell her own children, closed every door in the city to her. I got my company back. Sterling Foundations was working again. The cranes were turning. The concrete was pouring. But I didn't walk into my office with the same king of the world feeling. I realized that a business built only for profit is a house built on sand. The hardest conversation of my life happened a week after the trial. I was still living with my father. I didn't want to go back to that mansion. I was on the porch carving a new handle for an axe when a taxi pulled up. Andre and Maya got out. They looked pathetic. No luxury cars, no designer clothes, just hollow eyes. They stood at the gate, not daring to come in. My father just huffed and went to the shed, leaving us alone. I put down the axe and walked to the fence. "Dad," Maya started, her voice breaking. "Please forgive us. We didn't know. Mom lied to us." "She did," I said calmly. "But you wanted to believe her. You liked her lie because it was sweet, and my truth was bitter." Andre stared at the ground. "We have nowhere to go, Dad. Our cards are blocked. Our friends won't pick up the phone. Mom, she's drinking. Can we come back? We understand now." I looked at them, my children, and my heart was breaking. I wanted to open that gate, hug them, and say, "Of course, come in, I'll fix it. I'll give you money. We'll buy new places." It would have been so easy, so familiar to just throw money at the wound. But I remembered Alicia's words on that tape. "They are idiots. Who will blow it all?" I remembered my father's words about the foundation. I realized if I give them a fish now, I kill their ability to ever hold a rod. I had to do the hardest thing a loving father can do. I had to say no to the handout. "I love you," I said firmly. "You are my children, and the doors of this house are open to you. You can live here. There's food on the table, and your grandfather would like the company. But I am not giving you a single cent." They looked up, shocked. "Then how are we supposed to live?" Andre asked, lost. "With your hands, son. With your hands." I showed them my palms, covered in calluses. "I have the company back, but you only return there as regular employees. Andre, there's a warehouse position open. It's hard labor, but it pays on time. Maya, the archives need someone to sort files. It's boring, and it's entry level." "A warehouse?" Andre's face twisted. "Dad, are you serious? I'm the owner's son. That's exactly why twice as much will be expected of you," I cut him off. "You want to eat? Work. You want a car? Save for it. I am not buying your love anymore. If you walk this path, if you learn to respect yourselves for your own work and not for your last name, then we can talk about an inheritance. Right now, the choice is yours." They left, angry and confused. I thought I had lost them forever. But 3 days later, Andre showed up at the warehouse. He put on a uniform and started moving crates. The foreman called me and said the kid's hands were bleeding, and he was frustrated. But he didn't quit. Maya started in the archives a week later. I know she cries in the bathroom when she breaks a nail on a file folder, but she stays. This is my last chance to raise them to be real people, and I'm going to hold the line, even if it hurts me to see their struggle. I hired Sasha in our planning department. She's a brilliant specialist now that she doesn't have a sort of fear hanging over her head. And Tasha Jackson, the woman whose call saved my life? We grab coffee sometimes, just as friends. She reminds me that kindness is a boomerang, that always comes back even if it takes a very strange path to get there. Right now, I'm sitting on a bench in front of the brand new wing of the Pediatric Cardiac Center. We finished it, despite the trials and the scandals. On the front, there's a plaque, the Avery Jackson Life Center. I insisted on it. The building is beautiful and bright, and children are already running around the courtyard. I look at them and feel that peace my father talked about. I sold the mansion. I live in a small apartment in the city, and I spend my weekends at my father's. It turns out a man needs very little for happiness: a clean conscience, work that helps people, and people who won't betray him. I think about what happened a lot. It was a terrifying price for clarity, but if I hadn't been betrayed, I would have stayed a blind ATM for my family. I would have never known who I really was. Life broke my old foundation, but it helped me pour a new one. And this concrete has no cracks. Andre called me yesterday on his own. He didn't ask for money. He just asked, "How are you, Dad? Is your back okay?" That simple question is worth more to me than all the millions I almost lost. I've lived a long, hard life, and I've learned one simple thing I want to share with you. Don't be afraid of losing money. Be afraid of losing yourself while chasing it. And please, right now, don't wait. Call your parents, your kids, your friends. Just hear their voices. Because in the end, when all the walls crumble, only their warmth stays with you. Friends, I have one last personal question that I ask myself every day. Do you think I was right to cut off the easy money and send my kids to do manual labor? Or is a father obligated to provide a life of luxury, regardless of betrayal? Tell me honestly, is it cruelty, or is it the only real kind of love? I'm really glad you're here, and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you wanted to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.